And so you've been on this tour for a while, with this book tour, speaking to people about your experience. And we were just talking backstage about some of the incredible girls that you have come across, one of whom showed you her invention. And I wanted you to bring it with you on stage and show everyone here this incredible thing, because I can't.
Hi everybody, so glad you made time to come out, and I'm so grateful for that, and thank you. So here I am, I'm in St. Louis, all these girls, one girl's waiting to talk to me, and she said, oh, by the way, you know, we really care about making the world a better place. And she said, in one of my, I think it was her silver award, they were going to nursing homes, and they noticed all the styrofoam. And they thought, gosh, you know, that's horrible for the environment. So being good Girl Scouts, they immediately decided to do something about it, and they created a product, Eco Glue, made from styrofoam, and they have a patent pending on it. Isn't that amazing? It is incredible. So, you know, one of the great things is girls tell me about all the projects that they're working on and what they're doing to really improve the community and their hopes and dreams, not just for themselves, but for the world. And that's just so exciting.
Yeah, and also that this is science. Right?
Yes.
And so it must warm your scientist heart.
It does. It really does. I know. You know, and this was true 1484 that has a patent pending. So yeah, there's all these budding scientists, and that's one of the fun things about this book is there's been so many girls that it really frees them up to be the girl who has these dreams in science or math, whatever her dreams are. It's also interesting because boys 9 and under also like it, and they wear their NASA shirts and ask me to sign their NASA shirts as well.
What happens when they turn 10?
I don't know, something does, but yeah.
Okay, well let's go back in time. And you grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Right.
In a relatively poor family.
Right.
Your mother was from Mexico. She had a 6th grade education. And Dad from Texas was a chemist. Tell us a little bit about your early years upbringing. What was it like?
You know, I didn't know we were poor. You know, we lived under streets. We lived, you know, where it was really inexpensive. So that meant we lived on a really busy street. And there's this really sad part about, you know, our dog got hit by a car because we lived on a really busy street. But I just didn't think about that we were poor. I also like to say I grew up eating organic chicken, not because it was like a thing, but it was because it was cheap. Our neighbor had chickens running around in her backyard, and so we're like, okay, we'll eat those.
It's
now
free
I know it's things. Yeah, it's free range. Now it's a thing. But you don't know that, and you know that just seemed comfortable to me. You know, everything was in Spanish. Everything was, lots of kids running in and out, and I didn't think anything was different about that, and I was really happy.
Yeah, and then you decide that you're going to this elementary school that you love in the neighborhood. Your mother decides this neighborhood isn't safe.
Yeah.
Because your sister got a very bad case of meningitis.
Yeah, that's really sad. You know, the book, even my older brother, you know, when you read it and relive what happened to my sister, even now, every time I read it, it really impacts me. But you know what happened to my mom. My mom was that differential, you know, Mexican woman. And so my father hadn't wanted her to get a driving license. He didn't even want us to have a phone, right? And when, you know, that mother bear, when one of her, you know, babies is hurt, she's going to protect her young. And at that point, my mother looked around and noticed that the only place that there was a meningitis epidemic was in our neighborhood. And so she realized the neighborhood where the streets aren't paved, that's where it happened. So she moved us to a part of town where the streets were paved, you know, supposedly the schools were better, but it was the other part of the world for me, and it was incredibly scary. And I went from being a really happy girl to being incredibly fearful. And I would run home and close the door behind me. I didn't like it at all. I didn't
What were you
like
afraid of?
You know, everything changed. So think about it, all of a sudden one day your sister's sick, and then everything changed. My parents' relationship changed. You know, even, you know, my mother then said, you know, she said to my father in no uncertain terms, and I had never heard her talk to my father like this, I'm going to learn how to drive. I'm going to take you to work. I'm going to, you know, it's like, wow, you know. It really forced her to really take charge. But then she took charge and took us to another part of town, and it was very scary. So the world, everything I had grown up with was no longer, as it was. And so for me, I didn't know what to do. And then also my mom was figuring it out too. She spoke mostly Spanish. My dad was always at work. And so we got plopped into this neighborhood, and it was totally different. I like to say, I grew up with the Trujillos, the Sanchez's, the Lopez's, and now it's the Glomboskis, the Shrams. It was like, whoa, where are we?
Right, and interesting, your teacher decides to, rename you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you a new name, but
Right.
shortens your name.
That's true. It's funny, growing up, I grew up in a very Mexican household. So you were Silvia Acevedo Monge, and if you ever knocked off and didn't say Monge, my mother would be like, you left me out, because that was just the way the naming nomenclature was. And there was a lyric, sort of this lyrical quality to, Mario Humberto Acevedo Monge, Silvia Acevedo Monge. All the boys' names ended in O, and all the girls' names ended in A. My sister Laura Elena Acevedo Monge, and then Armando Gustavo. So you just have this lyrical quality. And then going to school at Head Start, and my teacher said, no, choose two. I was like, oh, whoa. And I looked at my mom, what do I do? And so it was Silvia Acevedo. And I realized when I went home to talk to my dad that night, and it was like, I knew it was going to be really different. Choose two.
Yeah.
And I felt like a little bit disservice to my mom, all of a sudden her name got dropped.
But what was happening was this assimilation.
Right.
And you were actually on the front lines of this assimilation and feeling the direct effects of it, and being torn between the traditional Mexican ways and the modern, new American ways.
Right.
How did you feel as a child straddling those two worlds?
Well, lucky for me, I was born in South Dakota because my dad was an officer in the military, so I was born at Ellsworth Air Force Base. And that's really important because my mom was one of 13, most who came to the U.S., and everyone stayed monolingual Spanish. But because my mom had this experience of being in South Dakota and no one speaking Spanish, she knew how important it was to learn English. So at a young age, when we went back to Las Cruces, she found a bilingual missionary in our church. And the other thing that was different is we were raised Baptist, not Catholic. So this bilingual missionary taught us English, even though we lived in a very Spanish-speaking neighborhood. And she was from San Antonio, Texas. And I remember because in the church alcove, she had set it all up. She had the American flag. And one of the first things she taught us was the Pledge of Allegiance in English. And then
Did you know what you were saying?
not really, but I knew it was sort of important and to do it just right. But then also, Jesus Loves Little Children was the first song I sang in English. That was really helpful. So that when I started school and Head Start, I already knew a bit of English. So that was really, really helpful for me.
But you write that you understood numbers before you understood words.
Yeah, there was something about numbers that really calmed me down. And also, it was sort of unfair, but my dad, he was very traditional Mexican, and so he let my brother go to the library, get a library card, that was it. But for some reason, for me, before I could get a library card, I had to save money. I had to show that I could save money and that I, could show that I was responsible. So from a very young age, I began, finding every single, penny. If I found a quarter, that was like, wow, that was really great. My mom helping me count the money and getting to past $5 so that I could then open up a bank account. Once I opened up a bank account, then I could get a library card. And so there was something like magical about counting up the money. And so I think that was a really positive experience. And so then counting became sort of a good way of soothing myself.
Because you were so afraid.
Yeah. And so all throughout my life, and I think when I wrote the book, I really learned something about myself. Because numbers became a way of soothing myself. Counting, figuring things out. And, when I had some difficult times with my father later on, I went into numbers and just to sort of get on the other side of my brain. And the more I got into numbers, the more I felt better. And then the better I started doing more exercises in all my math books. I even did like the ones you're not assigned. How your teacher assigned you. I even did more. And then it made me feel better, and then I got better at it. And so it was this kind of self-perpetuating. And so I got so good at math, I became a rocket scientist. So it wasn't all bad, eh?
Yeah, not bad.
That's pretty hard math, so yeah.
So initially, though, it was a way for you to control a chaotic situation that you didn't feel in control of.
Right.
And you also say that that was what attracted you to Girl Scouts.
No, actually what happened was, we moved to this other school and I hated it. It just was not a very comfortable situation. I would run home. My brother made friends very quickly and I didn't. And I would just shut myself in my room. But finally there was a Girl Scout that was persistent. And she kept following me and just kept saying and inviting me after school. Finally, I got my mom and I asked my mom and she let me. My mom was so excited. You're finally interested in something. Go, go. So I went and there I found these girls doing these fun things. They were doing these great activities. And also for me, what was wonderful was, remember, life had changed for me, and so life felt very much out of control. And so I think that was probably why I closed the doors, and I was trying to, I didn't want life to be out of control again. I remember every night praying that my sister would wake up back to normal. I wanted things to go back to how they were. And so I was really struggling with that, and I was struggling with how can you control the world? It felt like you were left to fate. And then at Girl Scouts, that first meeting, we were making sit-a-pons. Who knows sit-a-pons? Oh yeah, we had a Girl Scout crowd. Okay, good. So for those who aren't, you take strips of fabric and newspaper and you cut them into long strips and then you weave them together so that you have something to sit upon. Hence the name sit-a-pon. And we were making those, and the girl next to me wanted the scissors, and I handed her the scissors. And when I handed her the scissors, I did blade in, I know somebody just, you can't do that, and the troop leader stopped everything, and she asked the brownies to demonstrate the appropriate way to pass scissors. And I felt kind of hot shame, like I did something wrong. Here I am new into this group, and I'm just feeling this hot shame. The girls stand up, and I can remember their names, Cindy Bird and Liz Brittle, and they said, here's the appropriate way of passing scissors, handle first. And then one of them turned to me and said, and another rule, you never run with scissors. And I remember thinking, I didn't know there was one rule, much less two. I'm supposed to pass it. But then another thing, I felt this calm come over me. And, think about being a scared girl, and life is out of control. And I thought, here's this organization that cares enough about me passing scissors. Imagine what they'll care about. And so I just remember for the first time in a very long time, I felt so calm. And I just fell in love with Girl Scouts.
So, and then there's the cookie part, the selling of the cookies. So for, I think probably when you're first presented with this, it would seem bewildering.
Cookies, the cookie program, I know Girl Scouts was so impactful for me for many ways, but the cookie program probably was the thing that most changed my life trajectory, even though there was a big thing about science. And that's because when you're raised in poverty and near poverty, and even though we had moved to a different part of town, my family still lived paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes we ran out of money. We didn't have a savings account. And so, in Girl Scouts, when my troop leader, when I told her I didn't think I'd be able to stay in Girl Scouts because I couldn't afford to do all these things, and she said, don't worry, we're going to sell cookies. But then she stopped and she said, this is how you have a goal. Your goal is to sell this many boxes. And so now that's your goal. Here's the plan. And here's how you work towards that plan. And here's the steps you have to take. And here's how you know you're on target. Now, to somebody raised in poverty who doesn't know how to create opportunity, there isn't anyone in your circle that can explain that to you. So you keep living like fate happens to you, right? Because if you knew how to get out, you would, but you don't. And so when she explained that, I thought, this is the secret to life. I can I can decide what I want to have happen. I no longer am left to fate. I can make decisions to control my life. And that was huge for me.
And how old were you when you came to that realization?
I think that was when I was 8, in 3rd grade.
I have to say, I venture to say, there are a few 8-year-olds, present company excluded, who would be that introspective and come to that conclusion.
I really do think that my sister's illness changed everything. And all of a sudden, I was just so, just think about everything had been upside down. And when I think about prior to her getting sick, I just remember just being a kid,
Yeah.
right? But after she got sick and the world turned upside down, I'm trying to make sense of things. Like, I'm like trying, how do I put some order and control in my life, you know? And Girl Scouts was really it. The other thing, though, that she helped me was the cookie rule. Never leave the side of a sale until you've heard no 3 times. And that's important because as a young kid, I sold to my family, I sold to my friends, and then I sold to people at church. But then I had to sell to like that neighbor lady that I just saw coming in and out of her car, but I never talked to her. And she was one of those people that I said, okay, I gotta go talk to her because I haven't made my goal. And I went to her and I asked her if she'd buy cookies. And she said no. And she was the first person who'd ever said no to me. And I remember thinking, troop leader Mrs. Provine said, don't leave the side of a sale until you hear no 3 times. And so I stood there and she looked at me like, go. I said no. And I looked at her and I said, is there anybody else at home that would want to buy Girl Scout cookies? And she again said no. And again looks at me like, go. And I'm standing there and I said, would it make anybody's day if you bought a Girl Scout cookie? And she bought 1 box. And that mattered. It made my day. But talking about persistence, resilience, and you'll read in the book that later on, when I signed up to go to college counseling, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and the college counselor pokes her head out and says, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm signed up to go to college counseling. And she said, girls like you don't go to college. And you know what? What it was that? That was my first no, right? Did I hear her? No. I stood up and I went to her office and I sat down. And then she said, you know, what do you want to study? And I said, I want to be an engineer. And she just laughed. And she said, girls aren't engineers. What was that? My second no. Did I hear her? No. And I went on and became an engineer. So those 2 simple things, like, you can make your dreams come true. I remember my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Baldwin, she showed us pictures of all these universities, and when she showed me the picture of Stanford, nothing personal, Scripps. She didn't show us a Scripps picture. But, you know, I grew up in the desert. You see these beautiful red tile roof, limestone buildings, all this green. I just said, I blurted out, I want to go there. And my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Baldwin, said, Sylvia, that's one of the best schools, and you can go there. And as my little 4th grade Girl Scout, I said, okay, that's my goal. Now I'm planning, how do I work back to it?
Yeah. And also, you had a teacher who encouraged you.
She encouraged
Who
me.
saw
That's
something
true.
in you and didn't
Yeah.
say you couldn't go.
That's right. Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, and this does bring up the issue of, are people like you determined, people with tons of grit? Are they born or made? And so I'm wondering how you've come to this. I know you give Girl Scouts tons of credit, and this particular teacher and whoever else along the way, but you also seem like someone who is atypically determined and full of grit.
You know, Girl Scouts was that lifeline I needed. It was, you know, that life preserver. And I honestly, if I look at my cousins, if I look at my friends that I went to high school with, a lot of them didn't graduate from high school. They didn't go to college, right? You know, my cousins who you would have thought had a lot of family similarities, they didn't get out, right? So I think had it not been for Girl Scouts, I probably would have had that determination, but it would have been so diffuse and unfocused. And again, I think I would have probably been like that really good bank manager or that store manager in Las Cruces, New Mexico. But that would have been it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known how to make opportunity happen because no one in my, in my family knew how to do that. So once I knew those things, which seemed so simple, which is, that goal, then you create a plan and then you work back in those steps and then you're persistent and you're resilient. That really was the key, and that's one of the things that really drove me about this book, is that I realized I see a lot of girls that don't know that, or a lot of kids that don't know that, and they think their life, like me, was up to fate. You're either lucky or unlucky, and it's not. It's not that. There's good fortune, but I'll tell you, I've been really lucky, but that's because I've been really prepared, and luck is preparation meets opportunity. And there's a lot of people who have had a lot of opportunities, but if you're not prepared, you don't get those opportunities.
I want you to tell the story of when your family was spectacularly unprepared when you went on a trip to Mexico and the car broke down.
So our cars broke down all the time. It was just what happened to cars. I just thought cars broke down. But then, you know, growing up, cars broke down. Now I'm in Girl Scouts, and cars are still breaking down. And one time we're in Mexico, and the Chihuahua Desert is only one step up from the Sahara Desert, okay? So it's hot, it's dry, and we now have my younger brother Armando. There isn't much food. We were going to eat at the next town. We never got to the next town. All the water, it had to be used for Armando. And I'm hot, I'm thirsty, it's hours in the sun. And I remember thinking, it doesn't have to be this way, right? It doesn't have to be this way. So eventually, a bus comes and we get on the bus and people feel, I remember people were feeling bad for us. And you know, as an American, you kind of like have a little bit of pride and you get on this bus and all these Mexicans are feeling so sorry for you. And you're like, oh goodness. You know, we were thirsty, we were hot, we were dirty from being in the sand. And so we were able to, you know, people were very kind to us, gave us water. My dad stayed behind and eventually he got the car. The car got repaired. Well, later on, I see in the newspaper there was an auto mechanics class for women. And I'm thinking, it doesn't have to be this way. So I call and I register, and on the night I ride my bike over there, and I remember the guy said, will your mom come? And I'm like, no. He's like, do you even drive? I said, no. He's like, okay.
You were 13.
Yeah, I was 13. And so there's a few other women, and they teach us about things, and we're going to learn how to change the oil. And then he says, and then, you know, you get out the auto, you know, the manual for the car. It's like, how do you get that? He goes, every car has one. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, and there's like this schedule, so you maintain your car. And I said, where are they? These magical manuals, so your cars don't break down. And he said, they're usually in the glove box. So that day I rode home, I go and open up, it was a 1966 Pontiac Lamance, open it up, a pristine auto manual. Never been cracked. And so there I was, I put all the cars on a schedule. I would be the one, I'd ride my bike to the car repair place. I would tell them what needed to get done, go to school. And after that, the cars never broke down. They were never scared.
What did your dad know to think of that you were the car repair girl?
Okay, so my older brother, he's a little bit of Tom Sawyer. So he was like, great, you know how to change oil, go change the oil, Sylvia. No front. My father just was not mechanically inclined. And every once in a while I tried to like tell him something and I'd say, you know, can you just make sure the air filters change? It's the desert, so you have to change the air filter quite a bit. And I said, you know, I looked, it's really dirty, you need to change it. And, you know, a few days later, I opened up the trunk of the car and there was the air filter. And I'm thinking, nah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't just take the air filter out, like, and not have the filter. I was like, I'm gonna check. So hop over the hood, I, you know, take off the wing nut, open it up. Sure enough, my dad had taken the air filter out, and we were driving around without an air filter, which basically means all that dust is like getting into your engine. No. And I said to my dad, you know, why'd you do that? He goes, well, you said it was dirty, so I took it out. I was thinking, replace it, you know. But actually, that worked out in my advantage because when I decided to be an engineer, you know, my family didn't have money, and so I heard about this opportunity to get this great scholarship. And they didn't have gender on it, so I just filled my name out. And the reason they didn't have gender is girls normally had never applied for that scholarship. And I ended up answering it better than anybody did. And they found out then I was a girl. And they came to my high school and they said, you know, we basically, these two engineers came and they said, basically, we don't believe you filled that out. So who helped you? And I said, I did. So they began grilling me. And they said, well, what mechanical thing have you ever done in your life? And I said, well, I changed the oil on the cars. And they go, prove it. So I stepped them through every single step. And they said, yeah, you just watched your dad. And I'm like, hardly. Not the case at all. But I was grateful because, you know, I could really answer with a lot of authority. Like I knew about cars, I knew about mechanics, and so that wasn't intimidating to me. So they had to give me the scholarship. And talking about a great scholarship, it was 4 years, everything paid, including books. Like, great, you know?
Fantastic.
I know, it was really great.
But you were told that or your dad thought, I don't know if your mother told you, but your dad said basically, you should be a housewife, you should not go to college.
You know, growing up, my dad wanted me to do well in school, but he had a very Mexican traditional view of stuff. And yeah, so that was really tough for him.
And for you.
Yeah, that was the hard part of the book, to be honest. If you've read it, you'll know, but if you haven't read it, I had a lot of tough moments with my father, and that was actually probably one of the very difficult things to include in the book. But I wanted to show kids that you can get through tough things with your family, and you'll see it ends really well on a good note with my father. But there were really tough moments that I had to overcome with my dad. And, you know, I really wanted something else for myself, and it was much bigger than what he thought, either for me or for himself. And I think that really threatened him. And so there's some really challenging parts, but we got through it.
But he was a chemist.
Mm-hmm.
Did he not see your scientific mind as something that he could relate to, that perhaps he viewed genetically?
Gender's a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, he really had all these hopes and dreams on my brother. He really did. And there was just something that really he just favored my brother. He just didn't think about those things with me at all. You know, he talked about my World War II endlessly with my brother. I know a lot about World War II just by listening to them, but he didn't engage with me that way. And, you know, in the book, at the end, you'll see that we did kind of come back, and it was sort of like when he realized I was really going to be an engineer, and he drove me. It was all of a sudden like he needed to give me all my life lessons on that drive from Las Cruces, New Mexico to Albuquerque. It's like, okay, I haven't told you anything, but I guess you're really going to be an engineer, and here's what you need to do. So it was actually really heartwarming. That was the first time that he did something like that.
What was a piece of advice he gave you?
He gave me, actually gave me some really good advice, because I was going to be working with Matt as an engineer, and he said they're going to send you on wild goose chases. They're really going to try to intimidate you. They're going to try to make you quit. And he said, don't ever let them make you quit. Always be positive, be proactive, try to solve problems. And he said when they send you on that goose chase, you know, on some kind of thing like find the left-handed monkey wrench, and you go and do that, and you say, I can't find it, and they all laugh. He goes, let it go, just let it roll off your back. And later on, and you know, and you'll see in the book, when I went to Stanford and ended up graduating from Stanford, and I gave him the Stanford mug. Later, his boss came up to me and he said, do you know that mug? Your dad carries that everywhere at work. And he says, oh, Stanford, did I tell you my daughter went to Stanford?
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
So you knew that he was proud of you.
Yes.
And loved you.
Right, yes.
Talk a little bit about being at JPL, because some of this, you had an internship right there when you were at New Mexico State University.
No, that was Sandia Labs, and after I finished, then I went to work at Jet Propulsion Labs.
So after you graduated, you went to JPL, and I have to say that a lot of your experience sounded like the movie Hidden Figures, based on the book, of having to work around a very male-dominated workplace. How did you survive and thrive there?
Okay, so, you know, when I worked at Sandia Labs, that's where the episode in my book is, and there wasn't even a bathroom. So when Hidden Figures, great movie, but I remember watching it, and you know how she had to run to the bathroom? I remember thinking, you at least had a bathroom. I didn't have a bathroom even, you know? They didn't have a bathroom, and I took that as my first no, but I didn't let that stop me. And I had to identify all the closest bathrooms, so I brought a bike to work, and I would just ride my bike. I didn't drink a lot of water, even if it was the desert, because I was like, I just need to minimize the times I need to go to the bathroom. But I never complained. I just never let that stop. I didn't want to give them any reason to say, oh, she can't handle it. And after 6 weeks, they finally brought me a porta potty, and it said, you know, brand new white one, and it said hers on it. And you know what? I was grateful. It was now really convenient, you know, and I was the only one using it.
did the same thing happen at JPL?
No, in JPL they did have women's bathrooms, but yeah, it was a very, very male. And the other thing is you had to really have your Girl Scout confidence on, because guys have this thing of like, are you sure the math's right? You know, and you can't let them get you down because they will constantly be checking you, constantly like, did you make sure you did this right? It's like, how come you get to ask me that? I'm going to ask you those kinds of questions, you know? So you just have to really be confident in yourself. There weren't a lot of women at all, and there really weren't any Hispanic women at all working there. It was the only one. But it was a really exciting time because it was the first time we were bringing back images or sending back images from Jupiter. So there's a sense of excitement on campus, and I just really got into that. You'd see these images, crystal clear images of Jupiter and the moons and stuff we'd never seen before. The level of detail, we were analyzing it, so it was a really great experience for me.
And how did you decide to go then into the business world and go to Silicon Valley?
Okay, so I got accepted into Stanford. Yay! And so I said, I'm going, you know, finally, my life dream, going to Stanford. And what was happening is Silicon Valley was just taking off. Apple was just being created. I mean, it was just the start of Silicon Valley. And to be good at it, you know, had to have high, you know, not just engineering skills, but very high math skills. You know, so suddenly I landed at ground zero at the best place I could have actually landed in Silicon Valley with a Stanford master's degree. And so a lot of times, you know, people looked at me and they didn't want to hire me because they'd say, you? And then I'd be like, yeah, but I was a rocket scientist, okay? And they'd be like, oh, okay, I guess you can do the work, right? And that was really, those two things were the things that opened the door for me. You know, because when you tell other engineers you're a rocket scientist, that's sort of like higher on the pecking order. And so I was like, okay, what's your card? Oh, here's mine. And they're like, okay, I get it. So those things opened up the door, and so I got hired. And then I got to be right when Silicon Valley was taking off. And so that was a really great opportunity. And then I worked as a technical person as an engineer. But thanks to the Girl Scout cookie program, you know, they knew I knew how to sell. And so they needed technical people to sell. And so I got put into this special IBM program to really learn how to market and sell. And I realized, you know, it's part of don't take no, and, you know, setting goals. We're getting back to set your goal, you know, your quota, and then how do you make it happen after that?
Yeah. Well, Silicon Valley still has a problem attracting women, attracting people of color. I mean, this is decades after you were there.
I know, you know, so this is amazing to me because I was doing that a while ago. Just recently, I got a report. Latinas executives in Silicon Valley are not even 0.5%, 1%, not even. So, and I was like, holy cow, you know. I didn't realize when I was doing those things, and I was heading up international and Autodesk and, you know, Dell, I was just being my best. So that's one of the drivers of writing this book, because I realized, you know, my path, this was my path, but I'm lucky I'm a pioneer, but I don't want it to be just like the single path. I want it to be a huge highway. And I wanted to inspire all the girls, all the people that are girls and boys who read this book, to figure out what their path is and to believe in themselves and to be inspired to hold on to their dreams and to realize there is a way to make it happen. You do have to be persistent and resilient, no question. But, you know, I really did grow up on a dirt road. You know, I did have those things, and I didn't, you know, there's a lot of great opportunities now. So I really want to encourage people to, you know, set your goals high, you know, put a plan in place, and then work the plan and be persistent. And don't let them tell you no.
Okay, let me just ask you a little political question. Next year, the Boy Scouts are going to drop the boy in their name. They're going to invite girls in. I think your predecessor didn't seem too jazzed about that. What do you think about it?
Hey, we're just going to stay here at Loud and Proud. We're going to be in the Girl and Girl Scouts. That's it. How girls learn and lead. We're the experts in how girls have fun, right? And we are really going to stay with that. It's a proven model. I mean, there's a reason why half of all the female elected officials in America were Girl Scouts. When I go to Silicon Valley, 80% of the female tech leaders there, Girl Scouts. You know, we have one space was a Girl Scout. I mean, it's just really, we have this great proven record. And now with everything changing, with technology changing the entire world around us, we more than ever need to have Girl Scouts who understand technology, who have the life skills, the leadership skills. So as the world gets recreated, our voices are heard in that. And so I'm really excited about what we're doing. And when you think about it, you know, people sometimes say, oh, you know, when you're doing things for girls, it's not, you know, for example, this beaded bracelet is how we teach adorable daisies how to code. And so what we do, you know, a lot of girls are interested in cybersecurity because they want to keep their digital lives safe and they want to protect themselves online. So what you have to do is help them understand how computers, you know, communicate with each other. So that means understanding a little bit about coding. Well, if you talk to a subject matter expert in technology, they'll say, okay, you have to teach about machine language, and machine language is 0 and 1 on and off switch. Daisies are like, you know. But if you say to daisies, here's the alphabet expressed in either, you know, a blue or a yellow bead, and the blue bead is a 0 and the yellow bead is a 1. Now make a bracelet with your initials. They're like, oh, that's easy. So this is the S and this is the A. Okay, you show that to Daisy, she's like, okay, give me a longer one because now I want to do a necklace with my name. And then pretty soon they go, I want a longer string because I want to do a whole sentence. So we've taught coding, right? But it's in a way that girls love to learn and lead, right? And we continually do that with all these topics. We want to really make it interesting for girls so that they understand the concept, but in a way that is really relevant to them.
But so do you think it's more valuable to maintain separate organizations?
Oh, so yeah, and the other thing is, believe me, you know, girls, when they're trying, especially to do something untraditional, you usually only get one chance at this, you know, when you're in a co-ed situation. But in Girl Scouts, you get to keep trying until you know, master it. And I'll tell you, I've been on this book tour, and it is amazing to me. I go to middle schools, co-ed middle schools. Guys ask all the questions. It's like, girls, what happened? And if a girl asks a question, then some guys just want to talk over her. And I'm like, no, we're going to alternate girl, boy, girl, boy. But it is really interesting because it really is true. You see that girls don't get called on as much. You know, when they're trying to do something untraditional, they're not nearly encouraged as much. They're not always allowed to have that time. So we know in Girl Scout, it's all about that. It's all about how they form fun and friendships, but also how they learn. And they can do that in that safe, all-girl environment.
Okay, speaking of, this is a safe environment, and we'd love to hear your questions now. We're going to have microphones around. There's a microphone right there. Raise your hand. Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Let's hear from some Girl Scouts.
We got
Any
one
Girl
right
Scouts
here.
have a question?
Right there.
Microphones? Oh, I got it right here.
What inspired you to make the book?
What inspired me to make the book? You know, a little bit over 4 years ago, that's a great question. I was talking to a bunch of kids about my life, and they, after, it was a big auditorium like this, and afterwards we went to the courtyard, and there was a really long line, and I thought that was the line for lunch. But they said, no, it was a line of kids that wanted to talk to me. And I realized I needed to get my story out there in a way that could reach a lot of people beyond me just talking to them. So that's why I decided to write the book. There.
How does it feel to be CEO?
I love it. I love it. My favorite part of my job is being with the girls.
Oh, right.
What was your favorite part about being a Girl Scout?
What was my favorite part about being a Girl Scout? It was making friends. You know, it was really making friends because I was in a new neighborhood, new school, and it let me make friends. So that was good. And then it helped me learn that I could do science when I earned my science badge. That was probably the other thing.
We have one up there.
Who inspired you to achieve more?
Who inspired me to achieve more? That's a good question. you know, my parents did want me to do my best. I had great troop leaders. And then my favorite people I loved reading about were Claremont and Florence Nightingale. I really like reading about them.
I got it here.
What was the one person who kept encouraging you?
Who was this one person? I had some teachers that were good and some that were not as encouraging, but I'm really grateful that my teachers kept encouraging me. My mom was a big believer in me. My mom was like my big cheerleader. So a lot of moms like reading the book because it's a very yay mom book. Here? Oh.
How many cookies did you sell?
Okay, I'll have to tell. This is a different time, a long time ago. So at my troop, the goal was 75 to do all these fun things, but we decided we really wanted to even have longer, so we each had to sell 125 boxes. Now that's like nothing, but back then that was like a big deal. Over here.
I have a question for you. I wanted to know, did your sister ever stop getting sick?
Oh, Laura, my dear sister Lauda. So Lauda did stop getting sick. It did change her brain forever. So she became Special Olympics. She became developmentally disabled. But she still really, as much as she could, she never read beyond the first grade level. But she ended up working at a grocery store, helping bag groceries. That was one thing she did. And she was in Special Olympics. And she was so good as an athlete. She represented the U.S. in the Winter Special Olympics, and she brought home a bronze for America. Oh, in the back.
Are you still friends with some of your old Girl Scouts?
I am still friends with some of my Girl Scout friends. Yeah, some are silver and others are gold. Yeah.
There's a hand in the back.
What would you like any Girl Scout to take from this book?
I love that question, and what I want is for you to be inspired. So when you look at the book, I want you to ask yourself, what is my star? What do I want for my life? And I want you to make that goal and that vision for yourself, and then just say, I'm going to make that plan, and then I'm going to make it come true for myself. That's what I want.
What did it feel like to be asked on the commissioner for the White House?
Oh, it was serving under President Obama, and that was a lot of fun. So I got to go to the White House, and if you ever get invited to the White House Christmas party, go. It was never on my bucket list, but now that I've gone, it would be on my bucket list. It was really quite an honor, and I'm in that typical Girl Scout way, I wanted to make sure we did something, so we ended up changing policy so that funds in Head Start could be used for bilingual materials. Previously, that wasn't allowed, so we actually made a difference in policy. And another spoiler alert, Michelle's actually a little taller than Brock.
It's not the heels, it's not the kitten heels.
Ah, she cute, yeah. Where's Mike's?
When did you stop doing Girl Scouts?
When did I stop doing Girl Scouts? I lived in a super small town, and so when I was in middle school in cadet, we didn't have a troop anymore, so I was only able to do Brownie Junior and cadet. But then later on with my sister, my mom formed a troop for my sister, and my sister went all the way. Okay. Oh.
Hello, I'm a lifelong Girl Scout and a Scripps student, but I have a question from my Girl Scout leader and my mother, and she wants to know what advice you would have for someone who is leading a Girl Scout troop in about 15 years.
Okay, who's going to lead a troop in 15 years? Okay, we're still going to be about creating girls of courage, confidence, and character to make the world a better place. And always stay curious, because we at Girl Scouts have to be relevant for girls. And so you as a leader have to really be curious because you've got to stay up with what is interesting to girls. So that's what I would say.
There's a hand over here. I can use.
Was there ever a bronze award?
Did I ever earn a bronze award? No. Unfortunately, I didn't earn a bronze or a silver or a gold. But I like to think that me being the CEO is sort of like my gold award.
The hand's right here. I don't think you need a microphone.
Okay? Up here?
Good. With the vest.
What was it like to be a rocket scientist at JPL? It was really exciting because when you're working on a mission that's going to space, Christmas is when that spacecraft is going by a planet. That's Christmas because you launch it, that's fun, but then you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and then it goes by the planet. And so I joined right when it was going by the planet. So it was such an exciting time because we were getting all of these images. So that was really, for me, when I think back to the time at JPL, I just think about how much fun it was.
I do STEM myself, and I was wondering, when you were an engineer, did you build the robots yourself, or did you design them and then have them built?
So, I did do some work with rockets and help build those, and I did build a lot of systems, especially like manufacturing systems, so I worked with that quite a bit. And then after a while, when I was working at IBM, they said, oh, you have some people skills, thanks to Girl Scouts. And so then that's when I shifted out from technology and working as an engineer and got more into the management part.
What challenges did you have as a rocket scientist?
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that question. What was the question?
What challenges did you face?
Oh, what challenges did I have as a rocket scientist? So one of them, there weren't a lot of women there. And guys have this thing where they like to challenge you because they don't think you knew what you were doing and you didn't do the math. So part of the challenges were thinking that like you couldn't do it, you couldn't handle it. So you had to really be confident in yourself and you had to be persistent. So those were some of the challenges that I had.
Hi. In today's society, there are some girls who are non-binary, and so I wanted to know how you're going to work with that.
So Girl Scouts, we're going to be keeping the girl in Girl Scouts. So as a girl, a family presents a girl as a girl, we're going to continue to, really accept her into Girl Scouts. So thank you.
Who was your role model as a child?
Who was my role model as a child? So my mom didn't read English very well, but I got this book from the library about Clara Barton, and I checked that book out so many times. My mom learned part of English. She could read the book so many times. So Clara Barton, I was really impressed with Clara Barton. And do you know she was also an inventor? The first aid kits were created by Clara Barton, as well as the American Red Cross.
We've got one over here.
Okay.
Well, what was your favorite Girl Scout song?
My favorite Girl Scout song is, Make New Friends. But right now, I'm kind of liking Princess Pat. Okay.
Where do you think you'll be? Where do you think you would be if you didn't have Girl Scouts?
I think about that a lot, and I thought of that question so much when I was writing this book. And I really remember when Stanford called me in the mid-2000s, an archivist, to say, you're one of the first Hispanic, male or female, to graduate from Stanford, and actually still to this day. And they weren't even recruiting in Las Cruces, New Mexico, so they're like, how did you do that? And so I realized at that point how important Girl Scouts was in my life. And I had never thought about that before. So that made me think about what would my life been like if I hadn't been part of Girl Scouts. And I looked at my cousins and my relatives and other girls. Now I was just on television on CBS. So a lot of people reached out to me and they're like, I remember we did a summer party, and they're still all in Las Cruces. And that's okay. but I realized I probably would still be in Las Cruces, working in a local store. Okay.
So what did you want to be when you were younger, and how did that change
Okay.
where you are now?
So what did I want to be when I grew up? One of the things in my family is we rarely play the what you want to be when you grew up game. So I really didn't think about that, and it was sort of just expected you would be married and have kids and be a housewife. That was really what the expectation was. So it wasn't until I was a little bit older that my mom started to say, what could you be? And so I used to think I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor. But then I decided you had to learn a lot about biology and memorize a lot of Latin names and scientific names, and I thought, no, I like numbers better. So that's when I changed. So I didn't decide to be an engineer until I think I was in high school. Sure.
How did it feel being one of the only girl rocket scientists?
How did it feel? So when I worked at JPL, there were now women's bathrooms, but I got them all to myself. When you're living your life, you don't feel that different. You're just trying to be the best that you can be. So I didn't always feel very different. I just tried to be myself. But I didn't have as many friends at work. It was hard to make more friends with the guys.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Okay.
One here.
What's your favorite memory from Girl Scouts?
I have a lot of favorite memories from Girl Scouts. I have a ton of them. I don't know how to... Oh, I know my favorite memory. My favorite memory has to do with my sister, not me. And that would be, so my sister was developmentally disabled. And anybody have to work with developmentally disabled folks? Okay, so one of the things you realize when you're working with developmentally disabled people is that the number one thing is they want to be normal. And so my sister, she went to a special school. She was keenly aware that she was different, and what she wanted to be more than anything was just normal. So when my sister put on the Girl Scout uniform, she was normal. She was just another girl. And one time, my mom noticed that to present the colors at our local county courthouse, they used to invite Girl Scout troops or Boy Scout troops. And so my mom said she wanted my sister's troop to present the colors, and they told her no. And my mom just was persistent, and she said, I want my daughter's troop to present the colors, her Girl Scout troop. So they said, okay, but they said, don't embarrass us. Well, my mother, I have to tell you, she trained my sister's troop within an inch of their lives. They were like, they were going to do it. But you know that moment when my sister and her friends walked in with the flag and going down to the courthouse and putting the flag, they were like any other American citizen. They just were participating in an American right, and they were normal. And I think that's probably my favorite Girl Scout story memory. Hi there.
Since you had a Hispanic traditional father, how did he feel about you being in Girl Scouts?
How did he feel about it? That's a great question. My father, he wanted to know if there were going to be any boys around. And so he felt very confident when he said, oh, there's not many boys. And he was like, okay, that's okay. He was very protective. So yeah, he was very happy once he found out there would be no boys.
Do you like the cookies?
Did my father like the cookies? My whole family loved the cookies. Yeah, we love our cookies.
All right, well,
I think actually that's all the time we have for questions.
All right,
I want to thank Madeline and Silvia. Let's give them a round.